Okay, this is Orlando Wilson. What I want to talk about in this video is extortion and security management. I was checking my news feeds this morning and I saw there was a boat that capsized, an immigrant boat that capsized in the English Channel this morning, and I think they pulled 3 people dead from the water. I'm sure more will follow, but such is life, right? What I was thinking is, how can we transfer how governments are dealing with the immigrant crisis over into the private sector? What lessons can we learn? And I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn, but they're basic lessons, and they're not lessons for anybody that's got common sense, but we'll talk about them anyway. I like to keep things simple. As Mikhail Kalashnikov said, it's complicated to keep things simple. And I think a lot of people have big issues keeping things simple. When I'm looking at a problem, I always look at the source of the problem. And I mean the root of the problem. I'm sure a lot of people would say the root of the problem of that boat overturning would be a wave, would be the weather, etc. But they're in denial. People thinking a little bit deeper will blame the traffickers, but who enabled the traffickers? A lot of people will blame the immigrants, but what's the motivation for the immigrants to take those risks? Nobody knows how many people's died crossing the Mediterranean, crossing the Aegean, how many people's died in the caravans coming up through Latin America into the US, how many people's been sexually assaulted, abused, etc. Nobody knows, nobody cares. But who's responsible for these actions? Who's responsible for these people wanting to keep coming? I'd say the people responsible are the governments that's giving these immigrants the incentive to come. Now, in the kidnap and ransom extortion world, there's a saying that if somebody pays once, they pay again. And I've had clients come to me that thought their easiest way out of an extortion issue was to pay. What usually happens is once they pay once, they get squeezed again and again and again until they're squeezed dry, or they end up in a world where it's completely out of their control. So if you don't want to keep being extorted, you don't pay. You play hardball. And there's a lot more to it. You need leverage, etc., etc., etc. But you also need some balls not to pay, because the easiest option is to always pay. Why do these immigrants keep turning up? Because they're being paid to turn up. It's an incentive for them to turn up. If there was no incentive for them to turn up, they wouldn't turn up. Same can be said about the issues with all the hijackings of the boats off Somalia how many years ago? Why were the Somalis hijacking boats constantly? Because it was in their interest. The insurance companies were paying them to have the boats released. If people pay ransoms, and this is why a lot of governments are publicly against paying ransoms, because they know if you pay one ransom, more of your people will get kidnapped and you end up paying a lot more ransoms. You're enabling the criminals. You're enabling the scumbags. So, basic rule, don't pay. You pay once, you pay again. Okay, the other thing is, if you've got a program, a security program, there has to be rules and regulations. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a cough at the moment. There has to be rules and regulations. And if the rules are broken, there has to be consequences. I travel a lot, and I know for a fact if I overstay a visa, and I've had to go and get visa extensions in quite a few places, if I overstay my visa when I get to the airport, when I get to the border, I'm going to have issues. I'm going to get fined, might have to go to court or some BS, right? With a lot of these, with these illegal immigrants crossing into America, into UK, into Europe, what consequences are there for them? Nothing. So really, the immigration rules have been decriminalized for a lot of people. I know they wouldn't be for me, but for a lot of other people, they're decriminalized. If you cross illegally into the country, there's no criminal consequences. You'll be fed, taken care of, etc. So how can you have laws in place? How can you expect to deter people from breaking those rules if the rules are not enforced? So, first thing, you pay once, you pay again. Secondly, if you've got a security program, make sure there's rules and the rules are enforced. If the rules are not enforced, there's no point in having the rules. Border management. Okay, this can come into basic security management. Let's say we've got an orchard, an apple field, right? Around the apple field, we've got a fence, and we can have a canal inside to stop people stealing our apples. But if people decide to jump the fence, swim the canal, some drown every now and again, and they're coming in, stealing your apples and going back out again, okay, you got a problem. If I was called in, client called me in and saying, how do we protect, not that I've ever been asked to protect an apple field. If a client calls me in and says, okay, I've got a problem, my apples keep being stolen, the first thing I'm going to look at is, okay, what security do you have in place? Do you have security managers? Do you have security personnel? They say yes. I say, okay, that's your problem. If you want to protect an asset, you can protect an asset. Especially if you got the budgets of a lot of governments, unless you don't want to protect that asset. I would be looking at the security managers and the security personnel, because if assets keep being stolen and perimeters keep being breached, it means it's in somebody's interest to do that. So I'd be looking for corruption within the security personnel, within the security managers. It's obvious. It's basics. So, if you pay once, you pay again. 1. 2, if you got rules, make sure they're enforced. 3, if you got a security company, security personnel, things keep going missing and perimeters keep being breached, I'd look at your security personnel to see who's profiting from your losses. It's common sense, it's basics. Am I saying governments are corrupt? I think we can all see that governments are corrupt, and too many people are making money from the current state of affairs. Another one I'll throw on, it makes me laugh with the Brits especially, because I think UK's quickly turning into a failed nation. 50 years from now, yes. There was a recent issue in the UK. They had a mini budget. I think it was the Prime Minister was Truss. I forget the name of a financial guy. But he came out the other day and he said about his why he caused such a panic and why he caused the economy to take a big dip. He said, well, we got carried away. Okay, you're a politician. You're in charge of the country's finances, and you admitted you got carried away. You got excited. You got excited with the taxpayers' money, so you screwed everything up even worse. If you're choosing people to work for you, make sure you're not choosing people, especially if you're dealing with stressful situations, especially if you're dealing with situations where people could be hurt, harmed, etc. You're not employing people that's going to get excited and carried away. To me, that's pathetic, and that's the state of the governments we're dealing with. Why is there such an issue with immigration, etc.? I'm just using this as one example. Because governments are weak and they're employing people that get carried away. In the private sector, you cannot employ people that get carried away, and you can't be weak, especially if your clients are dealing with issues related to organized crime, extortion, etc., etc. So, I hope talking a little bit about that incident in the channel today, it just made me think. I've highlighted a few of the basics, a few of the very, very important basics about extortion and security management. I've got 3 books online specifically to do with close protection. There's a lot more books on there to do with various aspects of security. I'm throwing up a lot more videos to do with various aspects of security. So follow us on social media. If you're connected directly with me, feel free to drop me a line if you have any relevant questions. If the questions aren't relevant, I won't be answering. So please keep it real and stay out of trouble.